Captain Jake Morrison gripped the cold railing as another explosion rocked the UES Defiance. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge, while his crew worked feverishly at their stations. Enemy fire blazed through the void, relentless. "Sir, we've lost 3 more ships," Lieutenant Amy Foster reported from the communication station. Her voice was steady, but fear flickered in her eyes. "The Zephyrions are breaking through our defensive line." Jake studied the tactical display, dread tightening his chest. Of the 50 ships they had brought to defend the Kepler system, only 27 remained. The alien coalition's fleet, 200 strong, was overwhelming. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a massacre. All ships. "Fall back to jump point Alpha," Jake commanded into his headset. "We can't hold this position." Human vessels pivoted and fired up their engines, glowing blue as they fled the fight. Jake's jaw tightened as slower ships fell prey to Zephyrion fighters, hunted down like wounded prey. Admiral Lisa Carter's face appeared on the main screen. From her command ship, the UES Victory. Her gray hair was tightly pulled back, and her lined face reflected decades of war. At 55, she looked far older than her years. "Jake," she said softly, her tone resigned. "We need to accept the truth. We're losing this war. Our shipyards can't replace our losses fast enough, and our people are running out of hope." Jake nodded silently. What was left to say? They had tried everything: better weapons, faster ships, unconventional tactics, but nothing had turned the tide. The Zephyrions had superior numbers, technology, and allies from countless worlds. Humanity stood alone. Sir Amy interrupted, her voice tinged with confusion. "I'm picking up something unusual on the emergency channels." "What kind of unusual?" Amy frowned, tapping her console. "It's an old encryption code, one we haven't used in a decade. The signal's coming from the edge of our solar system." Admiral Carter leaned forward on her screen. "Put it through." Static hissed through the bridge speakers before a voice cut in, clear and firm. "This is Commander Ryan Phillips of the UES Harbinger, requesting permission to dock at Luna Station." The bridge went silent. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Amy's stylus clattered to the floor. Even Admiral Carter looked stunned. "That's impossible," whispered Lieutenant Dan Cooper from the weapons station. "The Harbinger vanished 10 years ago." "Everyone knows that." Jake remembered the day vividly. The Harbinger had been humanity's most advanced warship, equipped with cutting-edge experimental weapons and shields. Commander Phillips had led a classified mission to test the new technology. But the ship had disappeared without a trace and no distress signal, no wreckage, nothing. "Commander Phillips," Admiral Carter said cautiously, "can you confirm your identity?" "Admiral, this is Ryan Phillips. Service number 77,492 PHA. My ship carries 47 crew members. We've been away for 10 years. But we've returned. With something that can help humanity win this war." Jake glanced at Amy. She was already verifying the records and gave him a firm nod. The voice and service number matched perfectly. "Where have you been for the past 10 years, Admiral?" Carter asked. There was a brief pause before Phillips replied, "That is a long story, Admiral, one best told in person. We are 3 hours out from Luna Station. The Harbinger has been... improved." Jake felt a shiver creep up his spine. There was something in Phillips' tone, an edge of authority, of experience that hadn't been there before. "Improved how?" Admiral Carter asked. "You'll understand when we arrive, Admiral," Commander Phillips said, his tone calm yet cryptic. "What we bring will change everything." The transmission ended, leaving an uneasy silence on the bridge. The faint hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of the consoles filled the void. Jake exchanged a glance with Amy, whose furrowed brow mirrored his unease. "Orders, Admiral?" Jake asked finally, breaking the quiet. Admiral Carter leaned back in her chair, her expression pensive as she weighed the options. "Set course for Luna Station," she said at last. "I want to see this ghost ship with my own eyes." The journey back to human space took 8 tense hours. Jake spent much of the time reviewing old records on the Harbinger and its crew. Commander Ryan Phillips had been 32 when the ship vanished up. respected officer with a spotless record and a reputation for strict adherence to protocol. His crew had been hand-picked volunteers, the best humanity had to offer. When the Defiance finally docked at Luna Station, Jake joined Admiral Carter and a small group of senior officers on the observation deck. Together, they waited in silence, staring into the vast emptiness beyond the moon. "There," Amy said suddenly, pointing toward the horizon. At first Jake saw nothing, then emerging slowly from the shadows, a shape materialized. It was unmistakably a ship, but not like any human vessel Jake had ever seen. The Harbinger had been a standard design, with its white and gray hull characteristic of Earth's fleet. But this ship was black as the void, its surface traced with glowing lines of blue light that pulsed faintly. It moved with an eerie grace, gliding silently through the darkness like a living thing. "God," Admiral Carter murmured, her voice barely audible. "What happened to it?" The ship docked at Luna Station, extending mechanical arms that flowed like liquid metal to secure itself. Through the station's cameras, Jake watched as the airlock opened and Commander Phillips stepped out, flanked by his crew. Jake's heart raced. They looked exactly as they had a decade ago, not a day older. Phillips still had the same sharp green eyes and neatly combed brown hair. Their uniforms were unaltered, yet something about them was undeniably different. Jake couldn't put his finger on it, but he felt it deep in his gut. Phillips turned toward the camera, a faint smile playing on his lips, a smile that seemed to hide unfathomable secrets. "Hello, Admiral," he said, his voice clear and steady over the station's speakers. "We have much to discuss." In the medical bay, Dr. Amy Foster stared at the scanner in disbelief. For the 5th time, the readings defied explanation. She had spent 15 years studying human biology, yet what she saw on the screen was impossible. "Run the test again," she told her assistant, Lieutenant Ben Clark. "I've already run it 4 times, Dr. Ben replied, shaking his head. "The results are consistent." Amy moved to the examination table where Commander Phillips lay, looking entirely ordinary, but the scanner told a different story. His bone density was 3 times that of a typical human. His muscle fibers were denser, his reflexes faster, and his brain activity showed neural pathways she had never encountered before. "Commander," Amy said carefully, "I need to ask you some questions?" Phillips opened his eyes and gave her that same enigmatic smile. "Of course, Doctor," he said, "though I suspect you already know the answers will be difficult to accept." "Your crew exhibits the same anomalies," Amy continued. "Enhanced strength, faster reflexes, neural activity far exceeding normal human ranges. What happened to you out there?" Phillips sat up in one fluid, precise. Motions so seamless, it seemed unnatural. "We didn't just travel, Doctor," he said quietly, his voice calm yet profound. "We evolved." Body glowed faintly, a shimmering light enveloping him as if he were standing at the edge of a different reality. His form flickered, becoming translucent, then solid again, but subtly altered. His eyes, already intense, now seemed to hold swirling galaxies within them. The room grew quiet, everyone frozen as they watched the transformation. "Don't be alarmed," Phillips said, his voice layered with a strange resonance. "This is just a glimpse of what we have become." Admiral Carter took an involuntary step back. What are you?" Phillips smiled faintly, the glow receding. "Still human, Admiral. But more? The architects call it ascendant evolution. We're not just adapting physically, we're learning to perceive the universe in ways that were impossible before. It's why we're here, to guide humanity through what's coming." Dr. Amy Foster stared at the scanner, her hands trembling slightly. "Your biology, it's rewriting itself faster than anything I've seen. This isn't evolution as we understand if it's like your DNA is being programmed." "Exactly," Phillips said. "The architects have encoded knowledge and abilities into us, but they require time to manifest. They gave us the tools to help humanity survive its trials, but how we use them is up to us." Captain Morrison stepped forward, his expression torn between disbelief and awe. "You talk about trials, Commander? What exactly are we facing? What could be worse than the Zephyrians?" Phillips' gaze turned serious, The Zephyrions are formidable, but they are bound by the same laws of physics and reality as we are. Beyond them lie threats that defy those laws, beings and forces that exist on scales we can barely comprehend. Entities that see us as we might see ants. If they take an interest in humanity, we'll need more than weapons to survive. Admiral Carter folded her arms. And what do you propose we do? Trust in stories about interdimensional beings and ancient enemies. We're fighting a war right now. War we're losing. Phillips met her gaze steadily. Admiral, the Zephyrions are a symptom, not the disease. They're here because they sense humanity's potential and fear it. If we can survive them, we can prove to the galaxy and to ourselves that we are ready for what lies beyond. Lieutenant Clark spoke up, his voice still tinged with skepticism. If everything you're saying is true, why not just give us these powers? Why not make all of humanity like you? Phillips shook his head. It's not that simple. The architects believe in choices. They didn't force this upon us, we chose it. Humanity as a whole must make the same choice when the time comes. For now, we're here to protect and prepare. Amy's voice broke the silence. And if humanity chooses wrong? Phillips looked out the window at the stars, his expression unreadable. Then everything we've done, all the sacrifices, all the struggles will mean nothing. But I don't believe that will happen. Humanity has always risen to the occasion when it matters most. The room fell silent, the weight of Phillips' words settling over them. Admiral Carter finally spoke, her voice quieter but resolute. We'll hear you out, Commander. But you'll need to prove what you've said, and quickly. Right now. Humanity needs hope. Phillips turned to her, his glowing eyes filled with determination. Admiral, hope is exactly what we're here to bring. Through the communication, system.com, and unwavering. Understood, Admiral. Harbinger moving to engage. The mysterious black ship moved into position at the front of the human fleet. As it approached the enemy lines, it seemed to ripple and fade, becoming almost ghost-like. Then, suddenly, it surged forward with a burst of speed that defied physics, leaving streaks of light in its wake. Harbinger is charging its weapons, Amy reported, her voice tinged with awe. Energy readings are off the scale. Love. Never seen anything like this. On the Zephyrian flagship, Supreme Commander Vexiver stared at the tactical display. The human fleet was pitifully outmatched, except for one anomaly. The Harbinger's readings were unlike anything he had encountered in his long military career. What is that ship? One of his officers hissed. It does not matter, Vexiver growled. Focus fire on it, crush it before it can act. The Zephyrion fleet shifted, thousands of ships targeting the Harbinger. Energy beams and missiles streaked through the void, converging on the black ship. But just as the weapons reached their target, the Harbinger vanished. Jake's jaw dropped. Where did it go? Before anyone could answer, the Harbinger reappeared. Behind the enemy lines, it released a pulse of energy that rippled through space like a shockwave. Zephyrion ships caught in the blast lost power, their engines and weapons going dark. It's an EMP, Amy said, her voice shaking, but it's on a scale I can't even comprehend. Hundreds of their ships are disabled, Commander Phillips. Voice came through the comms again. Harbinger to all human vessels. Target the disabled enemy ships. Focus fire and push forward. Admiral Carter's voice followed immediately. You heard the man? Let's take back the initiative. The human fleet surged forward, firing on the crippled Zephyrian ships. Explosions lit up the darkness as the tide of battle began to shift. The Harbinger moved with impossible precision, phasing in and out of reality, appearing wherever the enemy was weakest. On the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship, chaos reigned. Vexiver roared at his officers, demanding answers. How is that ship doing this? We don't know. One of his officers stammered. Its technology is beyond anything in our database. Vexiver clenched his fists. Enough. Activate the Doomsday Cannon. Wipe out their entire fleet. The Zephyrian flagship's massive superweapon began to charge, drawing power from its core. Energy crackled along the ship's hull as the weapon prepared to fire. On the Harbinger, Phillips watched calmly. They're preparing their final attack, he said. It's time to end this. The Harbinger vanished again, reappearing directly in front of the Zephyrion flagship. Before Vexiver could react, the black ship unleashed a beam of energy unlike anything seen before. It tore through the flagship's shields and hull, as if they were paper, reducing the massive vessel to a glowing wreck in moments. The remaining Zephyrian ships faltered, their formation breaking apart. With their leader gone and their flagship destroyed, panic spread through their ranks. "Enemy ships are retreating," Amy reported, her voice triumphant. "They're falling back." Cheers erupted across the human fleet as the Zephyrian forces scattered and fled. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "We did it," he said softly. "No," Philip's voice corrected over the comms. "You did it. Humanity proved today that it's stronger than anyone imagined. But remember, this was only the beginning." As the Harbinger returned to its position near Luna Station, the battered human fleet regrouped, victorious but wary. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's resilience and its mysterious new ally. But as Captain Morrison looked out at the stars, he couldn't shake Philip's final words. The real test was still to come. Civilizations are sending inquiries about what just happened. The Zephyrians are broadcasting warnings about the Harbinger and its ... abilities. Jake nodded, his gaze fixed on the black ship as it docked once more at Luna Station. "There." Terrified, he said, and they should be. Inside the Harbinger, Commander Phillips debriefed with Admiral Carter and Captain Morrison. The medical bay was empty now, but the echoes of the impossible changes to Phillips and his crew lingered. In everyone's minds, "We've sent a message to the galaxy today," Phillips began. His tone was calm, but carried the weight of what had transpired. "Humanity is not to be underestimated. However, we must tread carefully. Fear can unify our enemies as much as it can deter them." Admiral Carter leaned forward, her expression grim but resolute. "You didn't just save Earth today, Commander. You shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. What happens next will depend on how we handle this moment." Phillips nodded. "That's why we must proceed with diplomacy and caution. Harbinger is a deterrent, not a weapon of conquest. The architects made that clear. We are to guide humanity, not rule through fear." Jake spoke up, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. "What happens now? With the Harbinger, with you and your crew?" Phillips glanced out the viewport, where Earth shone like a jewel against the blackness of space. "We will continue to prepare. The Zephyrians were the first challenge, but they won't be the last. The architect's warning was clear. Something far worse is on its way." Admiral Carter frowned. "What kind of threat are we talking about?" Phillips turned back to face them. His eyes, though human, seemed to hold a depth that went far beyond ordinary understanding. An ancient force, older than the architects themselves. They call it the Devourer. It has consumed galaxies before ours, and it's heading this way. Silence filled the room as the weight of Philip's words sank in. Jake finally broke the silence. "How much time do we have?" "Not enough," Philip said simply. "But with the Harbinger and the unity of Earth, we might stand a chance." Admiral Carter stood, straightening her uniform. "Then we start preparing now. This victory was just the beginning. We need alliances, stronger fleets, and to learn everything we can from the Harbinger's technology." Philip smiled faintly, the strange glow of his presence flickering for a moment. "You'll have our help, Admiral? But remember, the future is not set. Humanity has always been exceptional at defying the odds. That's why the architects chose us." As they left the Harbinger and returned to their respective duties, the weight of responsibility pressed on each of them. Earth was no longer alone, and humanity's journey had only just begun. In the depths of space, far beyond known star systems, a shadow began to stir. The Devourer was coming. But for the first time in millennia, it would face a united and determined foe. Humanity, forged in the fires of resilience, was ready to stand its ground. Jake leaned back in his chair, staring at the holographic display. A language that doesn't exist. What does that even mean? Admiral Carter shook her head, the frustration clear on her face. "We recorded it and ran it through every translation program we have. Syntax, the phonemes, None of it matches any known language in the galaxy. It's as if he's communicating in something entirely unique. Dr. Foster interjected. It's possible that his brain is operating on such an advanced level that he's creating a language in real time. A language tailored to concepts we might not even be capable of understanding. Jake sighed, rubbing his temples. So, let me get this straight. We've got a crew of people who are evolving into something entirely new. Half the galaxy wants to destroy us. And now we're dealing with leaders who might be on the verge of outgrowing their ability to relate to us. That's the crux of it, Carter admitted. And yet Foster added, they're still protecting us. So far, every action they've taken has been in humanity's best interest. The Harbinger crew could have left us behind, but they didn't. Jake stood and began pacing. But what happens when they stop seeing themselves as part of humanity? When they start viewing us as something? Less right now, they're allies. What if they decide there's something more? Admiral Carter leaned forward, her voice firm. That's why we have to act now. We need to find a way to stay relevant, to ensure humanity isn't just an afterthought in their plans. And that means two things. We need to push our own scientific advancements, and we need to figure out how to communicate with them before it's too late. Dr. Foster hesitated. There is one possibility, but it's risky. I've been studying their DNA and neural changes. If we can replicate the process in a controlled environment, we might be able to understand what they're experiencing at least partially. Jake froze. You're talking about turning humans into whatever they're becoming. Not entirely, Foster clarified. But we could create a hybrid. Someone who still retains their humanity, but can bridge the gap between us and them. Admiral Carter frowned. And what happens if that hybrid loses their humanity too? We're treading on dangerous ground, I know, Foster said quietly. But if we do nothing, we risk losing control over our future. Jake turned back to the observation window, watching Beth Anders as she floated serenely, her silver eyes glowing faintly. Whatever we do, we need to decide quickly. The galaxy isn't going to wait, and neither will they. As the three of them deliberated in the isolation ward, Beth Anders tilted her head slightly, as if listening to a distant sound. A faint smile played on her lips, and she whispered something in that strange, unrecognizable language. Unbeknownst to the humans watching her, far beyond the Milky Way, a vast, dark presence stirred. It had noticed the light of Earth and the Harbinger's rise. The countdown to humanity's next test had already begun. Civilization in this galaxy, Philip said, his tone calm but firm. Some will listen, others will not. Fear and pride often cloud judgment, even in the face of annihilation. Admiral Carter rubbed her temples, trying to process the enormity of the situation. What about the Harbinger? Can it fight these harvest machines? Phillips's expression didn't change, but his glowing eyes seemed to dim slightly. The Harbinger and its crew can delay them. We can even destroy individual units. Are vast, ancient, and relentless. They will keep coming until either they succeed or are confronted by something equal to them. Jake turned from the window, his face pale. You're saying the galaxy needs an army of guardians like you to have a chance. Yes, Phillips replied simply. The architects faced this choice long ago. They became what they are now, to stop the harvest and protect the fabric of existence. It is why they gave us their gifts. But the process is irreversible, and not everyone can endure it. Dr. Foster stood, her voice trembling with both awe and fear. This transformation is not just physical, is it? Your minds, your very perception of reality, have changed? Phillips nodded. Our thoughts now span dimensions. Right. Time is no longer linear for us. The weight of this knowledge is immense, and not everyone can bear it. Some of my crew have already faded, unable to reconcile their former selves with what they are becoming. Admiral Carter's gaze hardened. If we do this, if humanity steps into this unknown, we'll need guidance. We'll need you to remain connected to us, to help us through this transition. Phillips's glowing eyes softened, and for a moment his voice held a trace of the man he once was. I will guide you for as long as I can, Admiral, but understand this. The path forward is one of sacrifice. Those who choose to become guardians will leave behind everything they know. Their families, their friends, their humanity. All of it will fade. Jake slammed a fist on the table, and if we choose to stay as we are, Phillips turned to face him fully, then humanity, along with every other civilization. In this galaxy, will cease to exist. The harvesters do not negotiate. They do not stop. Silence fell over the room as the weight of his words settled in. Outside the window, Earth continued to spin in its quiet orbit, blissfully unaware of the existential threat approaching from the galactic rim. Admiral Carter finally spoke, her voice resolute. "We need to prepare. Dr. Foster, begin researching ways to replicate the transformation process. Commander Phillips, start coordinating with the alien civilizations that are willing to listen. Jake, organize our fleets and prepare for an evacuation plan. If this galaxy is going to survive, we'll need every ship, every ally, and every ounce of ingenuity we have." Phillips gave a small nod. "I will do as you ask. But remember, Admiral, the architects chose us because they saw something unique in humanity. Your people's ability to adapt, to fight, to hope, those are your greatest weapons. Hold on to them, no matter what happens next." As the meeting ended, Jake lingered by the window, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, ancient machines were devouring entire civilizations, and humanity's greatest battle was about to begin. For the first time in his life, Jake truly understood the fragility of existence and the resilience it would take to defend it. The weapons station, his voice barely audible. They're fighting on a level we can't even comprehend. Jake felt a lump in his throat as he watched the impossible battle unfold. The Harbinger was no longer a ship, was something far beyond human understanding. It moved through the Devourer fleet like a ghost, splitting into multiple forms, then merging again. Entire swarms of the smaller enemy vessels disintegrated in bursts of light that seemed to erase them from existence, not just in space, but in time itself. "Sir, the energy levels are destabilizing," Amy reported, her voice tinged with panic. "The Harbinger is outputting more power than any recorded source in known history." Admiral Carter's voice came through the comms, calm but grim. "All ships, hold your positions. Do not engage unless ordered. Whatever's happening out there, we're witnesses, not participants." Jake's tactical display blinked as sensors struggled to process the overwhelming data. The Devourer motherships were taking hits, their moon-sized forms cracking and collapsing as the Harbinger unleashed weapons humanity couldn't have imagined. Yet for every enemy destroyed, more seemed to pour from the void. Suddenly, the screen flashed red. Amy gasped. "The Harbinger it's destabilizing. Its structure can't handle the strain." Jake's heart sank. "What does that mean?" Before anyone could answer, the Harbinger began to glow, a brilliant light that outshone the surrounding stars. The ship seemed to fold in on itself, collapsing into a singularity of pure energy. Then, with a burst that shook every ship in the fleet, it exploded not in destruction but in transformation. Where the Harbinger had been, a massive, radiant entity now floated. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a being of pure energy and light, pulsing with power that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever known. "My God," Admiral Carter whispered over the comms, "they've become ... something else." The entity that was once the Harbinger moved toward the Devourer fleet. It didn't fire weapons or launch attacks. Instead, it simply existed. The Devourers began to retreat, their massive forms flickering as if in fear. The smaller ships disintegrated upon contact with the radiant being, their matter absorbed and repurposed into something unrecognizable. "They're running," Dan said, disbelief coloring his voice. "The Devourers are retreating." Jake watched as the remaining Devourer motherships activated their own reality-warping drives and vanished into the void. Fleeing from the entity that had once been Commander Phillips and his crew, the radiant being hovered in the void for a moment longer, then turned toward the human fleet. Its light dimmed slightly, and Jake could almost hear a voice, faint and distant, like a memory. "Protect each other. Protect what matters. The future is yours now." Then, As suddenly as it had appeared, the entity dissolved into countless points of light, scattering across the galaxy. Admiral Carter's voice came through the comms, firm but emotional. All ships, the battle is over. Begin. Recovery operations. Jake sat back in his chair, his hands trembling. They saved us, he said quietly. But at what cost? Amy looked at him, tears in her eyes. They gave up everything for us. For all of us. Jake nodded, staring out at the stars where the Harbinger had once been. We'll make sure their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Humanity had faced the impossible and survived. Not through strength alone, but through sacrifice and the willingness to embrace the unknown. And though the Harbinger and its crew were gone, their legacy would shape the galaxy for generations to come.